Hi, I'm Jeff Rosenfeld. I am the editor of the Bulletin of the American Meteorological Society. And on behalf of the AMS, I am here with Bill Hooke, who is the Associate Executive Director and a Senior Policy Fellow for the AMS Policy Program. And most importantly for today, the author of a new book, which just came out this week, called Living on the Real World. And there's a subtitle here. I'm not going to read it.
How thinking and acting like meteorologists will help save the planet.
So the first question I have, Bill, actually first the title, and then I want to get to that subtitle.
Yes.
Living on the real world.
Correct.
Instead
Very
of in.
important.
Yeah.
Yes.
Why is that?
And that's because we really live on the skin of the planet. Everyone talks about living in the real world, but in the real world. But we don't do that. Really, there are a few 100,000 of us that might be airborne at any given time. There are a few million of us that might be working in a subterranean mine someplace. But the 7 billion of us are all on the Earth's surface or in the built environment that's on the Earth's surface. We're stuck here.
Now, are we stuck on a planet that can take us, or
we're engaged in an experiment to find that out. We don't know. We've had tremendous success over the last couple of 100 years. But for all of human experience, we've been struggling to deal with a twofold problem. Earth as a resource, providing us the water, the food, the energy we need, but also Earth as a threat. Earthquakes and tornadoes and hurricanes and winter storms, extreme events. This planet does its business through extreme events. And we've struggled. We haven't really solved that twofold problem so much as we've overcome it. But we have overcome it. There are now 7 billion of us. We're consuming resources at 10 to 100 times the rate per capita that we had been consuming resources. And we've done this in a short period of time, short compared with whether we can keep it up. We have no idea whether we can keep this up or sustain this.
And that, I think, is the third way in which you refer to the planet, living on the real world in the book, right?
Yeah.
There's the resource aspect of our planet, and there's the sense that the planet is a hazard.
But also 7 billion of us are trampling around, destroying habitat and reducing biodiversity, not intentionally, but just accidentally.
Now, these are big problems, Bill. So you address all of this in the book, which is pretty amazing. But how is it that thinking like a meteorologist will get us out of this dilemma?
That was something that really charmed me, and I discovered that in the process of writing the book, actually. I got to thinking about it and realized that meteorologists actually have been working on a threefold problem that's been too difficult for us to solve all along. You know, we've been trying to solve simultaneously equations of momentum conservation, energy conservation, and mass conservation. Equations that have no real solution. And we've done something that, people who of limited mental capacity would do. We've approximated the equations with arithmetic, and we've solved them for short periods of time, and when the solutions broke down, we reinitialized and started again. And that's the way the Earth, the people of the Earth, need to solve those big problems of garnering the resources and protecting against the hazards and so on. But more importantly than that, it's actually the way the 7 billion of us are starting to solve the problems. We don't have to do a 180 from the way we're doing business now. All we have to do is get more intentional about what we see going on around us.
There are a bunch of things that meteorologists do, in addition to this talent for approximating when necessary. Meteorologists are also good at looking into the future and on a lot of different time scales.
That's a terrific insight.
They're good, and I'm taking this from you.
And
so.
we're good communicators.
Good communicators.
That's a serious one for us. So we do great at meteorologist to meteorologist communication. We call that the map discussion. We were doing that way before social networking became popular. And in other fields, scientists talk to the public and sometimes get dysfunctional results, but we've got a whole group of specialists within our community, the broadcast meteorologists, and they speak to the public in the language of the public. They don't talk down to people. They know that the viewers are as smart as we are, and that communication is working out really effectively, I think.
Another aspect of that communication, in addition to talking to people who aren't in the field, is
Yes.
talking within the field.
Yes.
There's a lot of collaboration that goes on in the enterprise that we have.
Our community is inherently collaborative. That's right. In physics, there's competition. My particle accelerator is bigger than your particle accelerator. If you don't want to help fund mine, I'll go it alone. But we can't produce a forecast for weather here in Atlanta a week in advance if the folks in Siberia don't cooperate with us and let us know whether it's wet or dry or cool or hot there. Yeah, and we've been doing it that way for 150 years.
And very good at collecting data in the process.
Right.
Able to look at the world objectively and kind of put that together.
Oh, that's a good point, too.
But
We should have been co-authors.
I'm stealing all this from you, Bill. But there is something interesting. You said that physicists, you mentioned physicists, and how they work differently.
Yeah.
You have firsthand experience with that. I want
That's
to
right.
unveil you.
Yeah.
You weren't always a meteorologist.
That's right. I started out in physics. And along the way, what Jeff is referring to is I had a 9th grade science class that focused on weather. And in that science book, it said, scientists are a community of scholars engaged in a common search for knowledge. And I got to the University of Chicago in graduate school in physics. And I don't want to be too particular about it because what I'm going to say next sounds a little harsh. But it was dog eat dog in that environment. We were working on a problem that was well plowed over. And the scientists in the lab weren't cooperating. In fact, one of them told me, he said, it took me 18 months to grow this solid state crystal, and I'll be darned if I'm going to show anybody how I did it until I've milked it for all it's worth. And the alarm bells went off. I thought, this is not the community of scholars that my dad belonged to. He was a mathematician, and my uncle, and so on. I want something more. And I started looking around the University of campus and Chicago campus and stumbled on geophysical sciences. And suddenly there were more than enough problems for everybody to work on. There were no Nobel Prizes involved. Nobody was going to get rich. And people were cooperating. And I walked into the sunshine.
You walked into the sunshine, but
Right.
there was a long career at NOAA
Right.
in research.
Which was
and
also
research management.
sunshine.
Yeah, sunshine.
Okay, I don't want that to come out any other way.
When do you think, or what? First of all, what do you think you learned about meteorologists in those years? And how
Okay,
they think?
that's a great question. This may not be going where you thought it was, but I specialized at the University of Chicago in something called gravity waves and infrasound. And a few years after getting my PhD, I was working in Boulder, and the garbage men in New York City went on strike. And they brought the city to its knees in 7 days. There were piles of garbage everywhere. And I asked myself, how long would it take gravity wave researchers to go on strike and bring the world to its knees? And the answer was measured in thousands of years. So I thought, I'd better find something else. And that's when I got into management. And it turned out to be one of the best decisions I'd ever made, just working with people. That's not where I think you were going with that. I'm not sure that's in the book.
I think that is in the
but,
book, actually,
yeah.
because the book is about management.
There's a
you
lot
could
in
have
there
sold
about
this as a
leadership.
management book, almost.
Yeah.
And you came away with some very valuable lessons in management, but I also get a sense that you learned a lot about management afterwards
Right.
on reflection.
Yes.
Working with
While
the
I was
policy
doing
program.
it, making mistakes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you feel that, I mean, management isn't something you think of as a meteorologist's toolkit
Right.
specifically, but there's this sense that you're dealing with something that's chaos
Yes.
when you're a meteorologist.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
as a
Okay,
manager,
now,
too,
yeah,
I think
that's right.
you've gotten that, mastered it, I would say.
And one of the beautiful things that you find there, it's very easy in management to think that what you're doing doesn't matter very much. But meteorologists actually have something in their background that points to a different conclusion. And that's the fact that the atmosphere is a chaotic system, and that even the slightest fluctuations in it, what Ed Lorenz referred to as the flapping of the butterfly's wings, would change the weather downstream. He focused a lot on a butterfly flapping its wings and generating a hurricane 3 weeks later or something like that. But the fact is, those impacts live forever. And I think it's easy for meteorologists then to embrace that, to realize my life matters. The littlest thing that I do has ripple effects that expand out and change the world forever. And that's an important thing for every one of 7 billion people to embrace. Otherwise, we feel we get lost. We're insignificant in the scheme of things.
Now we're sort of arriving at what I think you called the sweet spot in
Yeah,
history, in this
definitely,
sense.
no doubt about it.
You're emerging into a world that looks like chaos right
Yes.
now to many of us.
Yeah.
And you're addressing this problem
Right.
in the book by saying that as a meteorologist, you're well equipped to deal with that, and as a
Right.
manager, you've been well equipped to understand that,
Right.
how to approach chaos as an elegantly manageable situation
Yeah.
in a way that a scientist might see it. But you also have another parallel interest that feeds into this sweet spot in history,
Right.
and that goes back to that garbage strike again. I think.
Yeah, okay.
Disasters. I mean,
Yes.
that's a man-made
Yeah.
disaster, I suppose.
Right.
But a breakdown of systems
Right.
when things are extraordinary. And again, meteorologists are very good with extraordinary events. That's
Yes.
what they look for.
Yeah.
When did you become aware that, and how did you become aware? I mean, you mentioned this in the
Yeah.
book, that
Yeah.
disasters were of critical importance to your way of thinking.
Well, that was very interesting. I had been leading a big group in Boulder for some time, and in the latter part of the 1980s, Joe Golden, a scientist in another lab, was supposed to be a meteorologist in a group looking at natural disasters on a global scale. And for reasons that I can't remember right now, he decided he couldn't fit that into his schedule, and they looked at me as Plan B. So I showed up for this a set of academy meetings on natural disasters, thinking I knew it all, that it was the high wind speeds of the hurricane that caused the disaster. And I walked into the room. I was the only meteorologist there. Everybody else was an engineer or a social scientist or a Red Cross executive, all those things. And I learned in the process of being on that committee and going through a procedure that led to what was now called the International Decade for Natural Disaster Reduction, I learned that hazards, extreme events, are the way the Earth does business. But disasters, and that's the disruption of a community that exceeds the community's ability to recover on its own, that persists after the hazard, the extreme, has come and gone. Those are human constructs. It's the way we use land, it's the way we build our buildings, it's poverty, it's other social factors that contribute to that vulnerability. And that's when I sort of learned, hey, I've got to get in touch with that social world that's outside my geophysical world.
And you did that in a couple of different ways, it
Yeah.
seems. One, you were kind enough to accept an offer to join the team at the policy program in Washington, D.C. And you eventually you became director of the policy program. And one of the things that, as a meteorologist, and you're so good at communicating and collaboration and thinking rationally and handling chaos, you added another layer at that point in your career, it seems, where you became a trainer and a mentor of a certain type.
People say that.
Yeah. Now I'm wondering at what point you feel that the policy program became, in a sense, a grand mentorship enterprise. Mentoring.
I don't see how it could have been anything else. And maybe I should preface that by saying that I think somehow mentorship has this image of being one way, that there's sort of some gray father figure or mother figure, and there's a flow of help and support in one direction. But the world doesn't work that way. All of our interactions with each other, all of our engagement, our relationships are two-way. It's impossible for you to benefit me without being benefited yourself. It's impossible for you to change me without being transformed yourself. And it's really a two-way process. And the beauty of it is it's energizing. It doesn't suck away your energy. It actually makes the two of you on both sides of that process eager to go out and pay it forward. So it's a very positive thing. It's a wonderful word, but I think somehow we have the wrong association with it.
Yeah, and having just been awarded, you've just been awarded the Joanne Simpson Mentorship Award from the AMS, which seems very appropriate when I think of I think of the way that the policy program itself has brought so many people into the community and given them tools to go out and deal with Washington, D.C., their local communities. There's an element of decision making that the AMS has gotten into this way by teaching people how to deal with decisions that really enabled our community. I'm wondering now, looking back at what you've accomplished, whether you've been working towards this book all along in this mentorship enterprise.
Well, I feel, first of all, it's great to say I've been working toward it, but I feel more like a bystander watching thousands of people doing very exciting things. But the answer is I have been working on the book a long time. In the 1980s, I took a time management course. And one of the things they told us was to sort of write down our unifying principles and our goals in life and so on. And I've looked back at that stuff, you know, having finished the book. And I realized that in 1980, I was writing certain things about the connections between human beings and the environment that I thought were important, that are still in that book in some way. And in a way, I'm more relaxed now than I've been for decades, because I've been carrying around subconsciously this sense that there's something I have to get out. And I've done it in a way. Imperfectly, but it's out there. It was the best I could do. Yeah.
And what are you hoping people take away from the book then, in their sense of the future? Because as a meteorologist, you know, we're prone to forecast, and you make some forecasts in the book, which I hope people will read and find out. But we're looking into a very uncertain future. So what are people going to take from this book?
I want people to, we hunger to matter. That's maybe the deepest human yearning. And because it's such a deep yearning, we tend to look at our lives and think, we don't. And what I want people to do is to wake up to the fact of they're important as individuals, that everything they are the heroes of their life story, you know, and they're writing that kind of heroic adventure through a series of moments that don't make much sense when you're adding them all up, but do when you look in the rearview mirror, that don't make much sense when you look in your rearview mirror. But if you and I had a way to see our impact on all the other people, and the way Jeff's big impact on Bill translated into Bill's impact on his wife, Chris, and then her impact on her circle of friends, and it was always out there and growing. You know, and we saw we matter at the time in history when we're most needed. That's what I'd like people to see. And also, write a better book. You know.
I don't see that happening soon. Now, I want to ask another question, though, because this you're putting a lot of weight on people's shoulders.
No pressure.
You're giving them a sense of power, in a way, and you do show in the book, we don't need to get into this too much, but that the management of problems in the world today is diffused across many people. It's
responsibility and
management,
it's devolved.
So it's devolved, and you're giving people a lot of responsibility. You're telling them that they can be heroes. I believe you even use that word in the book.
No, I do.
But you also approach it the way a meteorologist would, which is with a tremendous amount of humility. I think that's another meteorologist's characteristic that you mentioned.
We have a lot to be humble about.
How do you balance? How do you personally approach that balance between trying to be a hero and humility at the same time?
I think it's less about trying to be a hero and more about embracing the idea. I'll tell you a story that's not in the book. When I was 17, I didn't know how to swim, but I was going to a college, or 16, I was going to a college the next year that had a swimming test. And I was my current height, and I weighed 140 pounds, and they threw me in the pool, and they said, relax. And I knew that was the one thing I must not do. And then one day, despite my best efforts, I relaxed, and a whole new world opened unto me. That's a metaphor for life. There's something in us that at the same time it's saying, be the hero of your life, is saying, but you can be relaxed about it. It's going to happen. A flower, a lily, doesn't say, I must bloom. It just is a lily. Okay, a butterfly doesn't say, I've got to flap my wings and cause that hurricane. It just meanders along. Okay, and out of that comes significance, out of that relaxed posture of just, and human beings are the only ones who don't come by that naturally. We think we have to be something else. And what we have to do is relax and allow ourselves to be fully human.
Well, I feel very inspired by the book, having read it, and inspired to think more like a meteorologist and be human at the same time, that they fit together perfectly.
And if you relax, you'll do that, and you'll also be obeying that wonderful Thoreau quote about, as you simplify your life, the universe will become simpler. I just marvel at that insight.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I invite everyone to simplify their lives by reading the book.
And thank you,
enjoying
Jeff,
Bill's
for this
insights.
conversation.
Thank
I
you.
always value every one of our conversations.
I always do too. I've taken a lot away from it, and appreciate it very much.